Welcome to our second master series and our 13th video in our second master series. This is actually the third video looking at the spectrometers, and tonight I want to address a real important issue. Now, we're going to address a few issues as we go along here dealing with the spectrometers, but one of a really prime issue is when mixing things together. This may sound very obvious, but there's a couple things that spectrometers are great for visualizing. The first thing that we're talking about is we get harmonic content that can be getting boosted in areas we don't want. And sometimes these can be in very small moments in time that cause problems. Like if you're looking right here around 1K, that all of a sudden I'm getting a boost here from these two mixed together, and the purple one's riding way up, which just for a very short moment, which is going to cause a boost right around here for a moment in time that may sound bad, or it might be for a much longer amount of time. And it's not affecting much the other harmonic content. It doesn't sound too bad, but maybe just right there for some moment. Two things happening. One of them may be boosting really high, or them being summed together is causing a boost in the harmonic content in some given area that's sounding bad. So, I mean, spectrum analyzers are great for visualizing this because no matter how much time you spent on those individual tracks, that you can visualize problems like that they might have to be reworked a little bit individually so that when they're remixed together, that they sound good together. Because I mean, it's a huge concept to get it through your head, and just a small issue like that can become very obvious. Another issue is that harmonic content getting mixed together, in that if I look here and I'm looking at this blue waveform from this track, you spent countless hours sculpting it and it's just beautiful. But when you mix it with this purple one, look at the timbre at the trailing end down here. It's just getting lost down here. Whereas this fundamental isn't that far off, and you've got it underneath there maybe like you want, but down in here it's boosting way high above this other more harmonic content that's inherently in the timbre of that sound, which is going to cause a problem. So you've got these two waveforms that have summed into this other waveform that doesn't sound that good, but by themselves they both sound great. And you're starting to visualize that there's harmonic content getting overridden and drowned out and lost. And so it's like all of a sudden you're getting this sound here that's mixed with this here that's having this really bad sound. So you have to go back and rework one of those tracks so that their harmonic properties can preserve their identity enough to where they sound good mixed together. And visualizing that and seeing that is really going to help you understand that concept, and really going to help you move forward with that concept, because it takes time. You listening to it and getting really familiar with hearing those issues, because sometimes I'll go back and go, okay, I went back and remixed, re-EQ'd this one in purple. Now by itself it doesn't sound that good, but now when I mix those two together, it sounds like gold. Or I did it the other way and I went and re-EQ'd the one in blue and then mixed them together, and that sounded like gold. Or one way or the other didn't sound as good as the other way. Does that make sense? So, and they can really help you see that. So as you try to figure that out and work at becoming this master virtuoso audio engineer, that this spectrometer is going to be hugely important to you to be able to see those types of things, and to be able to visualize them well, to look for those types of issues. You almost might have issues with tuning for a small amount of time. Let's say this little note right here in this one, it's wavering off. And right there, for just a small moment, it's out of tune. And it's like, you can let it fly, but every little moment added up in time over production makes your production, bam, a smash, or does that make sense? So, you seeing that and being able to catch that, where you're listening to those two mixed together and you're like going, well, by itself I didn't really notice it, but now that it's mixing in with this other track, it's just for a second out of tune a little bit from the other one, and it's causing this sound to get summed together and sound funky, bro. Does that make sense? And you can hear it, but you're not really being able to pinpoint it. Here, you just spotted it, bam, right there. Just for a small moment, it just sounds off a little bit. And I caught it. You know, it's a huge concept. Those things, working through those and thinking about them, is going to take your productions to the next level. And masking, even something simple as masking. I can go on and on and on and on and on about issues we'll run into, but as you start looking at this, it will become obvious. I mean, something like masking. I get a frequency that's, really close to another frequency for some reason, and it's a little bit higher than the other one, and it's masking the other one. And for some reason, it's summed and doesn't sound quite right. I go over here and attenuate that one a little bit, and it's closer to the level of the other one, or maybe a little bit under it, and all of a sudden that was it. And it was like the other frequency was off just a little bit, and it was causing this harmony that I wanted to happen in this developing waveform, and that fixed it. Now it sounds great. It's like having two harmonies going together that if they're not mixed properly, and the content that's inherent in each of them mixed properly, that the harmony itself isn't going to come out. There's a difference between, a really bad group of people doing harmonies and a really good people doing harmonies. Does that make sense? And it can be that kind of obvious. So it's kind of looking at it that way, and looking at it's in your ballpark to make something good better, and to catch little things to make it come out sounding as good as possible. So, and also while you're mixing together, that I've got these two, and let's say I've finished them up and they're perfect. So now I've summed them together, and then I'm side chaining in the third one. So I bring the third one in while I'm mixing, and now I'm looking at that third one. The one in blue is the two that I've already taken care of. Now the third one is that one in purple, and I'm seeing it summed. And I'm going through and looking for those same issues that are like, what's happening? What's going on? What's happening? What do they look like separately? And then what happens when they're summed? What does it look like? Where am I seeing issues or hearing issues or da 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 da? Being able to catch all these moments in time and issues that you might be happening. I know this sounds very tedious, and it sounds like, oh God, bro. But this spectrometer is going to really help you, because as you start to develop your ear and your eyes to go, well, some of the things we talked about, you may hear something going on. You say, my ears are great. I'm an audio engineer. My ears, I'm like an audiophile. And it's like, really, bro? Well, I do this shit, and I don't hear it. I pull out my spectrometer. I'm like, what the heck is going on there? Something is wrong for that moment in time. Oh, wow. Everything else in these two mixed together is perfect. This one little note is out of tune just a little bit. Yeah, in just one moment, I can hear it, something going on, but I can't really exactly pinpoint. There's some masking going on. Some of the timbre is getting drowned out on one of them and the other. Does that make sense? Or I've got low end hiss, where on this one it's fine, on this one it's not, and it's causing a little bit of hiss or rumble or something. The rumble on this area down here, I didn't low pass filter, I didn't catch that, or I didn't low pass filter it up enough to where it's something, dot 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 dot. So no matter how good you get at hearing it, that there's all kinds of little teeny things that are going to happen when you mix two pieces of audio together. Both of those sounds are very complicated and very complex, and there's a lot of stuff going on in there that when you mix them together, that now you've got this new waveform that is a sum of those two. So you don't have two tracks anymore. You have one summed complex waveform that has properties from both of those, but not both of them. People get confused that those are those two tracks mixed together. That's not the way it works. When you render that down, that is now one new complex waveform that is taking properties of each of those two tracks and summing them together in the way that you've decided, and now you've got this other waveform that has properties of both of them, but not both of them entirely mixed together. So if that makes sense, that's what happens. And so once you get that through your head, that you take a whole different look at your spectrometers, because that concept is those two waveforms, this stuff is going to get some of it boosted or lost, which means that's not going to get into this next waveform. It's gone. Does that make sense? For all intents and purposes, it's gone. Does that make sense? Depending on how high a sample rate and bit depth you have. If you're working with a really high sample rate and bit depth, a whole lot of it can get captured. But still, it's a lot of it can just get lost in the mix. So you got to really be careful of that, because sometimes things that are happening when you're working with the audio isn't what you think it would be happening. And so this spectrometer is one of the biggest tools you have to spot some of these type of issues, so that as you're going along and as you start mixing things together, that you can catch little issues. Every moment in time is important. And if I got a chorus and I've got 4 moments inside of that little chorus that bink, 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 that aren't quite right, and then all of a sudden that beautiful chorus that I spent so much time on those tracks mixing, and all of a sudden it just, nah. And why does my stuff just never sound, top notch, because there was 4 moments in time that just happened, that's lost. Even processors. We'll talk about processors in the next couple of videos, but you might have mixed too much reverb. The reverb's going in there, but you're trying to reverberate this tail end stuff that's gone. So you keep adding more and more and more and more as they're mixed together, and you're causing mud back there. And then you got this other waveform that you add in that might have content that's mixed at about the same level as this, but now it's getting mixed in with mud. Does that make sense? Where this other track is the dang problem, and now you're ending up with a bunch of mud from adding way too much reverb, and you don't understand why your stuff sounds muddy. That's a real simple example, but can be very true. So you got to really be careful of that. So, that whole concept we talked about in the first master series of preserving the identity versus blending, that those two concepts really come into play here to help you make those decisions to make this come out sounding as good as possible as you add more stuff in as you go through your mixing process. What has to happen so that this sounds as good as possible, rather than the individualities sound as good as they possibly can. The end result is that has to sound as good as possible, which can be sometimes them preserving their identity, sometimes some blending, sometimes a combination of both, and you just going through and really being, getting to the nitty gritty and being, micro analyzing what's happening to really be able to make the end product come out and sound as good as possible. And your spectrum analyzers are huge, wonderful tools once you understand a lot of stuff we talked about so far and from the last master series, that you will find that you're going to love your spectrum analyzer. It's like great. All of a sudden, man, my stuff sounds awesome, bro, because I caught all this stuff happening. Now my stuff sounds just great. And I know what I'm looking at. I know what I'm looking for. I'm catching all these problems, and my stuff just went to the next level, bro. So I really hope you enjoyed this next video at looking at our spectrum meters, and I'll see you in the next video.